No matter what people want you to believe, don't ever turn back on your dreams. It's all in your hands, a change is near.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, 3 Degrees of Love. If you're new here, thank you for taking the time to stop by. If you've been here before, welcome back. Thank you so much. Alright, so in my last video, I had started talking about, well, I was telling you the story about my grandmother and stuff, and at the end of the video I did talk about a giveaway that I wanted to host for my very first giveaway, which actually is taking place on Instagram. I will have my socials all linked down below, so feel free to stop by and enter the giveaway. Rules are very simple. I'll just give you a quick brief overview. You must be subscribed to my channel and following me on my Instagram accounts, and that's pretty much it. It's an open giveaway, so you know, globally, and shipping, obviously it will be covered, but any, you know, duties or taxes that you may incur, well, of course, that will be your own cost, and bonus entries will be given away for you know, for a few other things that you complete, but I'll let you head over to Instagram to see, you know, to see those. Anyway, and yes, and it's only for the songs of the grandmother's deck here, right in the middle here. And yes, the reason why it's paired with the Gentle Tarot and the guidebook is because it's the same artist who did both of these, but it is Kara Simmons of Joyful Resonance, whose deck this is. So yeah, so a beautiful duo, I must say. And yeah, and definitely check out the story about the connection with my grandmothers and why this deck means so much to me. So anyways, so with that being said, I wanted to sort of get into sort of talking more about the deck, and also kind of not only the deck, but also how other decks that I would work with is sort of in combination with this, or can work with and would pair with it, sort of thing. And that kind of also, as I think I was mentioning in the last video, you know, I wanted to do the last part of the series, which of, you know, what is love, and looking at from, you know, sort of global point of view, and you know, the idea at the sort of the macro level and sort of what that looks like, and then, you know, and sort of sharing with you, you know, some of the books that I would pair with it when working with these decks, and yeah, so what I'm gonna do is start with going through songs of the grandmothers, and I guess maybe simultaneously trying to talk about how I, you know, can connect them working at this sort of level of global love, if you're following me. All right, hopefully you are. All right, let's go. So I'm just gonna move these aside, just so I have a little bit more room to go through this first deck, actually. Yeah, so Song of the Grandmothers. a 66 card oracle deck and guidebook, and this is by the beloved Kara Simmons, illustrated by Mari in the Sky, as I said, and Mari in the Sky is the one who did the Gentle Tarot, and Kara Simmons is also the creator for the Prairie Majesty Oracle. I don't currently have it in front of me to show you, but I will put it up on the screen so you briefly so that you can see what it looks like. Okay, all right. So, oh, and yes, this covering here for the table, this is actually the giant blanket that was an add-on on the campaign for this deck. And I think if you were to head over to my Instagram account, you would also see some pictures. I do actually sort of dive a little bit more. Sorry, I hit the camera. My bad. Yeah, so I kind of go into a little bit more about the connection and somehow how how I feel like God, the universe, is speaking to me in these various sort of ways. So yeah, and anyway, so yeah, so you can go check that out on my Instagram account, like I said. So like, just look at the artistry. Look how beautiful this box is. Like, this is it's gorgeous. I don't yet have a bag for it, but I have reached out to my favorite tarot bag creator. She can create a bag for me, but we haven't seen and gone through materials yet. But anyway, and I love it because they're also a local artist, so like I can order a bag today, and most likely if she ships it out, next day I'll get it like in 2 days or something. So just a day from, so I don't have to wait that long, which is nice. Anyway, so yeah, so Song of the Grandmothers, and oh, okay. Oh, this is so beautiful. Oh, look at the inside. How to cast a spell: dream, believe, imagine, ask, open the pathways. The detailing is so gorgeous. Look at that. Alright. Okay. Oh, look at the back. Oh, yeah. So if you see here, this is sorry, this is her contact info, her website. So if you want to, check out this deck and more on her site, that would be like, yeah. All right. Okay. Ooh, look at this is gorgeous. Alright. Okay, this is not really supposed to be a walkthrough video, but anyway, yeah. So, oh my god, look at the guidebook. Okay, I don't want to get too distracted, but anyways, so yeah, so this is just my sort of geeky thing. When cards are not necessarily that snug in the box and they shake around in the box, I don't like my cards doing that. So what I do is I put them in an organza bag. So obviously I'm doing this mostly with the cards that don't quite fit that snug in the box. So to prevent them from shifting around, I put them in an organza bag so it helps to fill, oops, I'm so sorry. It helps to fill the space of the cards. So that's that. Like, look at this. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. So I tend to keep I only do this with the plastic ones. I tend to keep the plastic ones so I can put them back around the cards. Although sometimes though I find that over time of doing that, they do tend to stretch out, so they don't fit as well. So at that point, if it's not fitting well, you know, I'll just get rid of it. But for the time being, I like to keep them. Yes, I'm a nerd that way. Anywho, okay, so let's just put this away. This to the side. There we go. So the guidebook. Here are the cards. Wow, gorgeous. Alright. Hopefully, just double checking to see if I think we should be good from here. Okay. Grandmother Amethyst. Enoughness. Child, you are beloved. A gem prized by all, your worth immeasurable. Aww. I love that. That is such a grandmother thing to say, I feel. Aww. Thanks, Granny. Okay, so pretty special. So I think I'm just gonna read this first card here, and then I don't think it's not gonna be a walkthrough video, so I'm not gonna go through all the cards. I'll probably just flip through and then maybe draw a card at the end, like maybe as I'm going through all the decks, I might do like a multi-deck reading maybe at the end. But anyways, we'll see how it goes based on time and all that I want to get through in this video. So oh yeah, so Grandmother Amethyst, and that's one, and I love how it's numbered. I like the numbered ones because for me, in my nerdiness, but I guess how I bond with my decks as well, you know, for those of you who understand that lingo in the tarot world. Yeah, so when I'm done working with certain decks and I have them in rotation, when I go to put them away, pack them away, I like to very sort of, I guess, yeah, OCD, if you will, way of putting things back, you know, when I'm done with them. And I do this with everything, but anyways, but I love cards, so I think in a way it's one of those sort of fun OCD tasks, if you will, or the part of the OCD that I actually enjoy to a certain extent. But yeah, so anywho, I like to reorder the cards back in you know, in the numeric or whatever order that they are in. So sometimes if that means if it's the guidebook, like however they came, right? So so of course when the cards are numbered, It is so much easier because I'll put them in the numeric order. If they're not numbered and they're the decks that are like alpha ordered, and or even if it has a saying, I will alphabetize it like that, if that's how it came. Or even if it didn't, but that's the kind of the system that the deck is in, that's how I'll reorder it. So of course, the bigger the deck with no numbers, the more tedious the task is. So that sort of is something that will take away from the fun of it. So that's why I appreciate when they're numbered. Anyways, but totally doesn't mean anything like, in the sense where will I not use a deck because of that? No. No. Of course not. Because I have many decks that I do alphabetize and I absolutely love. But, yeah. But still, it's a quirk that I like when they're numeric. Okay, moving on. Amethyst. Okay, so 1, grandmother amethyst, enoughness. Her cluster resembles the entrance to a cave as a symbol of the precious jewels housed in each of our spirits. Even when they are hidden to our conscious minds. From outside grandmother amethyst's cavern, we see flickers of beauty within. The kind that shine when light reflects off each crystalline point. Grandmother Amethyst shares her glow to help us see how our own light sparkles inside and to remember it can never be diminished. When she appears, you may be measuring yourself against an impossible yardstick. Did you complete your to-do list? Did you eat right or exercise? Did you lose your temper or get frustrated? Did so and so approve? Underneath each of these, the root question is always the same. Were you good enough? Grandmother Amethyst objects to the form of this question. It ensures failure because the premise that we must do, achieve, or be anything in order to have value is false. Shh, enough now, child. You've been playing in that dirt for too long. Come into my moonlit chamber and snuggle close with your head on my lap. Feel my caress as I wipe away anything that dims your true nature. You are exquisite, my darling. You are always enough. It is impossible for you to be anything else. Won't you please believe it from one who loves you? No more hiding your light. Child, you are beloved, a gem prized by all, your worth immeasurable. That is impeccable writing, Kara. Absolutely beautiful. Anyway. Whoa. The power of that first card. Jeez. How many more cards are there? right? This is a 66 card deck, so 65. Alright. Remind me when I'm working with this deck to have a box of tissues. Just saying. Powerful stuff. But anyway, so it's funny because so when I read, I like to also meditate. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, that was an internal sneeze. Pardon me. I like to meditate with the cards when I'm reading and the messages. And that's also why I really appreciate a good guidebook, because I feel like it gives me the opportunity to really delve into the passion of the creator, to really appreciate the deck for what it is. Like, I guess I don't know how else to really explain it, but I guess that's the power of, especially when I'm, in this state of sort of meditation, how strongly I feel things. Excuse me. So how I, like as an empath and stuff. And so, yeah. And because I guess because of that, and I, can easily absorb others' emotions, I guess maybe that's part of why I have the issues that I do. But I also recognize because of that, it's so important for me to have a balanced, way of coping. I can see I can appreciate and see the destruction that bad habits have, but also, especially when it comes to our feelings, and and I guess appreciate the mistakes that I have made, and how I'm gonna better that. And this is just I guess a divinely gifted way of being able to explore those in further depth in cohesively with the work that I do in therapy. Because one of the things that I've been enlightened with, thankfully from my therapist, is the fact that the fact that how we identify our feelings, or a way to identify our feelings as children. Because the thing to understand about feelings is that they're irrational. And often, especially when you're dealing with people who have sustained trauma in their life, when they've had to, however they've instinctively chosen to adapt to situations, and especially those that have had to do that repeatedly in certain situations, that's how they sort of grow up, especially when they don't, when you don't work through and understand these things, you grow to to develop that habit at how you will deal with any sort of what appears to be threatening situation, any sort of thing that is a trigger to remind you of that trauma that you experienced, and you will instinctively go back to the way that you adapt. And that's how we tend to, based on what we're exposed to, how we end up relating to the world. So it's important to as we take a look at these things and we dive deeper into it, it's easier to really give appreciate them for what they are, but also work through them in order to better yourself and how you relate to others. And that's why I think the idea of love, and when I read the scripture, how I sense and I take the scripture is, this is just how what we give, but is universal. So if we're giving it to, and we're to give to everyone equally, and if we're to do that, we have to recognize the child in every one of us, which is our feelings. Because if we know as children, we teach children how to grow. Because when they come into this world, they come in fresh, they come in very instinctual, irrational, right? You sort of learn what danger is by being exposed to it. Well, you learn about life, actually, let's say good and bad, as you are exposed to it. Knowledge, everything, the whole works, right? So the longer you've lived, technically, the more knowledge you should have. But that's not always the case. Because just because the longer you live, it doesn't mean that as in those lives you've been exposed to certain things. So if you haven't been exposed to it, you wouldn't really have knowledge of it. That's why it's good to be, give love to every aspect. Give attention to every aspect as much as you can. And, unfortunately, the way that, life works in society has gone for, a while, and especially now, these days, with the inflation and everything, it makes it so much more difficult to be able to slow down, to recognize, to see the bigger picture. I've had the unfortunate opportunity to slow down, which has given me the ability to dive deep and learn these things. And that's how, my practice has grown. But I'm also learning these things and sort of combining them from every aspect of my life, and appeasing to certain things that are appeasing to my inner children, if you speak, I feel like this is the greater way to also tap into my intuition, and when we look at chakras and understanding, we understand the different parts of ourselves and different aspects of our life where certain things develop that, when trauma is experienced in these different areas, can affect us and throw us off balance. And that's the idea of chakra work and stuff like that, and that's why I saw the idea of love and what that means, and why, breaking it into different categories. I thought, because that's how I sort of, as I start, doing this work and relating things between my therapy and, diving into my ancestral past and, and like I said, my education and experience with social work, and and then a sort of understanding of psychology and certain things like that. That's where has all come from, to realize it's all connected. So this is a medium, cards, something tangible. My love for poetry and words and written words and everything combined. Pictures, stories, illustrations, cards. I mean, as far as I remember, I loved playing cards. I collect playing cards. And where did my love for playing cards come from? Well, that's a family tradition, playing card games. That's one of the biggest bonding experiences I've had with my mother growing up. And not just my mother, other family members too, but my mother was one of the more involved, consistent ones, with that. Same thing with my love for books and searching for knowledge. I remember that was part of my growing up. My mom would strongly encourage me to read even when I didn't want to, and she used to make it in this way, just like I was in school, because she would even write questions to make sure I read the book. Oh, mommy, I love you. But it's that encouragement it was that encouragement that actually helped develop my love for books. I remember, all through growing up and childhood and going to high school, and in my childhood days, I always had a library card. I was always, getting books from the library, and when I could, I was buying, my favorites, right? So, so written knowledge is another thing that I, seek. And like I said, when things were breaking down, I saw solitude in that. I took it maybe a little too far financially, but partly that was the way of the world too now, because at that time, the certain restrictions of the library and the time and the way that I read and the way that I go, in and out, and as I, developed and how I like to read and being busy and balancing my life, the timing for the length of time you can have a book taken out from the library and stuff like that, and having to remember to renew, well, that kind of got tedious. So when I could afford it, I was buying books. And then too, as things developed and more germs and disease and blah blah, I was less communal. Things were getting a little less appealing for me, and so, and of course that I would say is definitely a trait which I've also inherited from my beloved mother, to a certain degree. To a certain degree, not completely, but to a certain degree. So that was another thing why, it was definitely much easier and more less of a struggle for me to debate on whether or not if I wanted to buy a book. It was so much easier. It was just nope, for many different reasons. Right? Anywho, as I'm rambling on all about books, there is one book that actually I want to bring attention to when it comes to this deck that I think would pair so well, especially for all areas of love, really. But it really is too, when you're diving into, I guess this is also where shadow work would come in, in that, as I had, briefly talked about shadow work before, and, how that's referred to in the tarot world, and that sort of pagan culture sort of aspect, but also how, based on that definition, how I also view my therapy sessions and stuff like that as well, right? So it's hard work, but when you want to dive deeper into those things, these are some of the things that I feel, combined can be, even more useful when doing this sort of introspective work, side of spirituality and stuff. So anyways, with that being said, so Song of the Grandmothers, a beautiful deck, like I said, illustrated by Mari in the Sky and beautifully created by Kara Simmons. But the book, well, actually there's a few books, but the book that is the leading one, I should say, for this is My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menachem. I really hope I'm pronouncing that properly. If I am not, I do apologize in advance for botching it. I'm so sorry. But anyways, like New York Times bestseller, and actually this book was recommended to me by my therapist. So, this was another thing that was like the freaky thing around this time, that I began learning about this upcoming project that Kara was about to launch. Or was working on, not even about to launch, that she was working on. She posted hints on that on her Instagram and stuff. So, I knew when it was in the works, that was around the time that I found out about this book. And so basically what it's about is racialized trauma and the pathway to mending our hearts and bodies. Lena, I just sort of read the subtitle. And she did, sort of. Not really, but anyway. But as I have been going through this book, it dives into understanding that with trauma doesn't go back to just the trauma we experience. That whole idea of nature versus nurture, and what I've been coming to realize through, my research and me diving in and understanding, my past, and stuff like that, is that, and as I've been diving further into, this sort of spirituality and understanding the Akashic records and stuff like that, right? So we inherit, and that's some of the karmic ties, right? Historical karmic ties that we run into, and why it's important to understand our history, to really, it's a further way to dive deeper into understanding ourselves and who we are, why we respond the way that we do to certain things, this is and this is like a big trigger warning, because this here first starts off by asking you to recognize, because it's we're talking about racialized trauma. So that whole idea about black versus white and vice versa. It's asking you at the very beginning of this book to recognize where you may be triggered by some of the words and how you are sort of historically conditioned to believe otherwise of what is actually being said. So not just sort of hearing the words, but really understanding the feelings for why you're seeing it the way that you are, if that makes sense. So where in the parts of your body are you affected that also make you feel, that are also triggering you to feel that way or to have that point of view, those thoughts based on those feelings? Are you with me? I hope so. I really hope so. You know what? Let me find where that says. Okay. So here. This is the part where it's telling you that right in the very beginning. Hoping you can see that. Let me see if I can pull this up a little bit. But anyways, so I'll just read to you a little bit of what it says in the beginning here. This is also why I think this is a great book to work with when we're looking at, doing work, shadow work from a macro versus micro level, if you will. Or actually all levels, really. But anyways, but equally why it should be done on all levels. Yeah. Okay. So here it says, watch your body. As you experience this book, you'll learn to pay attention to your body. If you have a white body, there will be times when it will reflexively constrict in order to protect you from some of the truths you'll encounter. This constriction will be followed by a thought such as, I am not like that. I am a good person. Or, white body supremacy has nothing to do with me. Or, this isn't about me because I don't belong to a racist organization. When this occurs, just notice what you're experiencing without doing anything about it. Don't try to undo the constriction. Don't try to hold on to it either. Just watch your body closely and notice what sensations, impulses, and emotions arise. Don't take the reflexive thoughts seriously either. Don't try to support them. Don't debate them. Don't act on them at all. Just observe them as they arise and note any images or other thoughts that may follow. Excuse me. If you have a black or other dark body, there will be times when your body will experience a sudden shock of recognition or understanding. Things you hadn't fully grasped before may suddenly become clear. This might be followed by a rush of energy in the form of joy or anger or outrage, or a felt sense of clarity and rightness. Let yourself experience these sensations fully, but don't hang on to them. Let them move into and through your body like a wave, then let them go. Now I love this one. I love this part because this actually has a part. If you are a public safety professional, you may experience both sets of sensations and thoughts. When one appears, allow it to flow fully into your body and mind without doing anything about it. Then let it go, like a steadily shrinking image in your rear view mirror. Whatever your profession or skin color, as you read this book, at times you may sense profound hope, relief, or both. Let yourself fully experience these as they arise. Then let them all go as well. So you see, this is sorry. I did it again. I'm so sorry. So you see, this is basically telling you, like, this is basically a trigger warning, but also a how to navigate that trigger warning that you will experience throughout reading this book, if you will, if that makes sense, right? And so from the very aspects or points of view that would be most likely to be experienced, while reading this book. And I really like this. To me is a true reflection too for your audience, and and your likely audience too, because yes, this one for everyone, but you also want to appeal to those that would sympathize and see the importance of the book. And that's usually, this sort of type of people, such as myself. This is what I've sort of dedicated my work and my education to, and stuff like that. So yeah, because sometimes this idea can interfere, and funny enough, it often does in my therapy sessions too, and I acknowledge that. I totally know that it happens, and both my therapist and I will joke about it, because we both acknowledge it, and we both realize it. She knows that I already know and am aware of that flaw, but it's still her job to still bring that to my attention. And because I know that it is, we joke about that too. So it's funny, like, it's just, and we have that sort of that comfort level, that sort of what's the word, that connection, that professional connection, but she's also that comforting, soothing empress sort of embodiment of this representation too, and so yeah, and that's why too she was able to recommend me this book, so I can really appreciate that as well, which is also why, oh my god, I did it again, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so why I can appreciate this book for what it is, and and feel compelled to share it with you, as well as my connection to all this sort of how I feel those watching over me have been guiding me. So, anywho, yeah, okay. So, and here's another thing as a confirmation, acknowledging our ancestors. So, and this kind of, I think this part, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just sort of give you a brief, I'll skim through it and give you some, whatever. You'll understand as I'm reading. Okay, so our bodies exist in the present. To your thinking brain, there is past, present, and future, but to a traumatized body, there is only now. That now is the home of intense survival energy. Most of this book is set in the present, but small parts of it will trace two bloodlines of trauma from the past to the present. First, we'll trace trauma as it was passed from one European body to another during the Middle Ages, then imported to the New World by colonialists. What did I say? Yeah. Colonialists. Okay. I don't know, for some reason that just seemed wrong. It is. And then passed down by many generations of their descendants. Second, will trace trauma as European colonialists instilled it in the bodies of many Africans who were forcibly imported as indentured servants and later as property to the New World. They in turn passed down this trauma through many generations of their descendants. On this same soil, trauma also followed another earlier path, one that spread from the bodies of European colonialists to the bodies of native people, and then through many generations of their descendants. As estimated, 18 million native people were custodians of the North American continent when European colonialists arrived. They and their ancestors have lived here for an estimated 14,000 years. Okay, I said I was going to read, I wasn't going to read the whole thing, and I just did. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yay me. Anyways, no, I'm not going to read the rest of it. But anyway, so yeah, you got the gist of that. So yeah, it's giving you a lot of, sort of understanding how to see the book and read the book, and, and yes. And I guess that also the gist of what I was trying to explain too with that is the fact that we have to also recognize that our way of dealing with things too doesn't always necessarily, to remember, it doesn't always necessarily, like, be mindful of why we react the way that we react to certain things, but also being mindful that the same way we have a way that we will react to something with love, we should be giving that understanding to others. This is the part that I'm talking about at the sort of the macro level of what, to me, what love and how I take that scripture, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to verse 8, how, and me wanting to live from that embodiment, and be healed and aligned, not only physically, but first mentally, because the mind is what controls the rest of us, right? We can only control ourselves. And so we have to first sort of heal how we receive, information, and how we process that based on what we not only are exposed to in our present life, right, form, but also recognizing how we were conditioned based on our upbringing, based on, and recognizing how we adapt to what we're taught. And if we're taught this by our parents, then they must have been influenced by their parents and their parents' parents. And well, how far back does that go? And how far back does that behavior stem? What were the conditions that they were living in their present time that would have influenced to sort of adapt to that sort of way of thinking, to then pass on that behavior on to their children and their children's children, and how we, and how that's passed down to us. But as we do this introspective work and we recognize and give thanks to our, from that which we came and those that, were before us, and honor our grandmothers, the givers of our lives, essentially, we then, that's another level of healing. And as we recognize this, and we can recognize the patterns in ourselves, we can also recognize them in the patterns of each other. And as we do that, and we can identify them, we can then be more mindful of them and be respectful of them, and not necessarily react so irrationally in the moment, because we would recognize these patterns and how we can then break them historically for ourselves going forward in our future ancestral line, if that makes sense. Not only for that, but also for ourselves. And as we do that for our lines, we're doing that for basically everyone, because we are all entitled to the same thing. Why? Because we're all connected. It's DNA. Right? And you can keep going far back. You'll eventually figure it out that we all originated from somewhere. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic for another time. But yeah. So anyways, so this is why this is a very, very good read. Okay, moving on. And to work with the cards. Moving on. So, now, these next two books I talked about already in a previous video. When I was talking about, I talked about these ones in my previous one about partnership and familial connections and stuff. But even, these are appropriate even for when we're dealing with, people that are not, further beyond the rest of the world, right? And that's safe people and boundaries. So that's another a thing that I feel like, would go with you know, these and understanding, because here we can understand, well, when we make boundaries, are we being very mindful of why we have these boundaries? Because when, and are they really necessary? And when I say, I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong in my wording when I'm saying, I'm not saying boundaries aren't important overall. No. I am talking about the individual boundaries we set for every aspect of our lives, in how we connect with others and how we deal with others. Those are the boundaries I'm talking about. This is the opportunity to, with this work, is being able to recognize, are these boundaries that we create actually necessary boundaries, or are these boundaries that we have set based on false information that is appearing real based on our traumatic past. And we're using that information to respond to a present moment that may have some triggers, similar triggering aspects that are reminding us of why we are absorbing the false evidence that is appearing real. Yeah, with me? And if those are how we are then indirectly and unconsciously aware of how we are also hurting someone else, that we wouldn't want for someone to do to us. Yeah? With me? So, yes. Okay. So that's why I feel like, yes, this is a very good book, but also, as we are inputting it, taking the understanding and taking the entire part of the information, not just saying, oh, okay, well, this is it is important to do that, to look at it from that point of view as well, when we're, and that's why, it's good when we're looking at, sort of introspection work for sort of self-love, but also for, how we're relating to our significant others and our family, and even at a sort of a global level, when we're dealing people, how to safeguard ourselves, but also how to make sure that we aren't hurting others, or being mindful of how we can potentially be hurting others in the process, and how we can identify the areas in which we also may not be, or acting a certain way that isn't safe for others. Yeah? Okay. So that we can change that behavior for the better. Okay. Same thing with boundaries, and that's what I was, like I said, sort of referring to when I talked about the boundaries that we are setting that are based on, false evidence appearing real. Yes. Okay. And of course, you know, the 5 love languages. So it's, oh my gosh, this is already an hour video. Okay, you know what? As that's the case, I am going to make a part 2. Okay, guys.
No matter what people want.